This is Impact with Don Wenner.
Hello, world. Hello, America. Welcome, everybody, to the Impact with Don Wenner podcast. I'm one of the co-hosts, Parfet, and I'm here with a fabulous guest, Richard Wiese. Richard Wiese is a TV star. He's an explorer. He's a father. He's a husband. He's one of my dear friends, and he has been nominated 14 times for Emmys, and he's won 2, which is prolific. So he's a 2-time Emmy winner on his show, Born to Explore. I'm so glad that he's here. Richard, how are you?
Oh, I don't know if I can live up to that introduction, but thank you. It's good to see you.
Wonderful. Well, our audience are filled with many types of people. They're fabulous. And many of them are thinking, hey, I want to start a business, or I want to be in business, but run my business better. I want to be inspired. I want to look at life a little differently. I want to travel more. I want to broaden my perspective. So we've got a lot to talk about. I think we can provide a lot of good content for these fabulous listeners. So let's start off. How on earth did you become an explorer?
You know, you have mentors in your life, and I'm lucky that I had 2 really great ones in mind. My father was an airline pilot. He was a captain with Pan American, a 747 captain. And my uncle was the head of MIT's nuclear physics department. And both men had the time for me. And, you know, my fondest memories of just my father were standing out on our front lawn looking up at the stars. And he had learned celestial navigation when he first started flying. And, you know, vis-a-vis his career as a pilot, it afforded a lot of interesting travel. For example, when I was 11 years old, my father took me to Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa to climb it. And I have to be honest, it didn't seem out of the ordinary to me at the time, though I do reflect later on when I tell people, they'd see some, kid, they'd be like, you're kidding me.
Fabulous. All right, so let's talk about the Explorers Club, okay? So the Explorers Club, you've been president 7 times, is that correct?
Right.
All right, so what is the Explorers Club, and what is it? How can you be a part of it? How do you join? What kind of cool things have you worked on in your time there?
You know, it just occurred to me that my terms are as many Super Bowl wins as Tom Brady, who I know you're a big fan of.
Yes. I'm sad he's retiring. I kind of wanted one more year.
Yeah, and I think I've retired from being president. The Explorers Club is an organization that was started in 1904 by, at that time, a bunch of guys trying to be the first to the North Pole. And since that time, and I'll recount actually a dinner I believe you were at, is when I turned to our audience of 1,500 explorers and I asked, how many people here have been to the North Pole? And 250 people raised their hand. How many people have been to the South Pole? And about 200 people raised their hand. And I said, how many people have climbed Everest? You raised your hand. And I said, anybody here first? Or Edmund Hillary was there. And then I said, had anybody been to the bottom of the ocean? And a fellow named Don Walsh, who at that time was one of 2, though more people have climbed it. And then I said, has anybody here been to space? And I had about, 12 people raised their hand. Anybody been to the moon? And Buzz Aldrin raised his hand. So it gives you an idea that you've had everybody from Theodore Roosevelt to Jane Goodall and so many great explorers in between. And I have to admit, when I first joined, I was just thrilled to be a member. And in my absolute wildest dreams, I would have never imagined that someday I would be the president of that organization.
Well, you did a terrific job, and thank you for your service. And there are a lot of chapters throughout the country and throughout the world, and guests are allowed. So if you're interested in learning more about the Explorers Club and maybe attending a lecture, right? What's
Go to explorers.org.
Perfect. So let's talk a little bit about your TV show, okay? So let's start high level, then we're going to drill down. So tell the audience again, what's the name of your TV show and where is it airing? Because this is a really terrific thing.
So for the last 12 years, I've been doing a show called Born to Explore with Richard Wiese. I play Richard Wiese. And, the idea, I remember when the idea came to me, I was actually over Australia with a cameraman friend of mine. And so often when you work for people, you say, wow, if I were doing this, I would do this, 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 and I could do a better job. And so, I finally took this, the step forward to say, hey, I'd like to own my own TV show, call the shots, be able to uh, be the architect of its content. And so ABC at that time was starting a new morning block of TV shows. They, liked the idea of our show. And the only caveat I had in the negotiation was that we had editorial control over it. And so, generally these kind of negotiations are sort of more money based, and they didn't really care. They just needed a show on air. And that made all the difference in the world because I put together a team that I thought was smart, socially conscious. And, when we would decide what we were doing or how we were doing, we were tougher on ourselves than anybody could have been. And so there was a real pride on the team. And we used to always have an expression when we do something and somebody said, do you think we got it? And I'd always say, well, do you want to be an A student or a B student? And of course, you say, I want to be an A student. And, we were lucky in our very first year. I remember we were nominated for a daytime Emmy, and I was just blown away. When we went into it, we weren't really thinking about that. And I recall by our third year, we were the most Emmy-nominated travel or adventure show on television. So, we had a lot of success, and it was really based on pulling together a really good team.
So, Richard, when you first started your show, I think you had to take a big financial risk. Do you mind talking a little bit about that? I think the audience would like hearing that.
Yes, it was a financial risk because, if I decided to be the executive producer of it and I wanted to share in the revenue with ABC, I had to put a pile of money up. And at the time, my wife and I had just had our third child in 20 months. We had a 20-month-old daughter, and I had two twin boys. And, I spoke to some family members, and, they knew that I was very excited about it. And, I was pretty sure that at least the given ratings on ABC would be able to pay back any type of loan that I took. And, this show was a lot more successful out of the gate than I thought, though, ownership, while there's the good aspect of obviously calling your own shots and your hard work directly pays off, there's so many other lessons that it creates in terms of personnel, how to keep a team motivated. And, when you're working for somebody, it's always they can be the evil, big corporation or network or whatever it is. You're that person now. And so, people are coming to you with all sorts of problems, financial things, and, you're doing all sorts of juggling. But as I said, I had a really ethical, smart, motivated team, and that made all the difference in the world. I didn't have anybody who was cancerous within that group.
Well said. Well said. When you think back of all the TV shows that you've done, all the places you've traveled, all the people you've met, any one or two stories come to mind that kind of were very profound for you?
Yeah, I think though, what you find out once you get over your own personal testosterone of beating your chest that I'm here, I'm on the summit, you start noticing the most interesting thing in travel are the people you meet along the way. And I'm always blown away by what I see people overcoming, people in Africa or in Asia. And a couple stories come to mind. There was a woman in South Africa. Her name was Mrs. Zakali or Mrs. Z. And she ran a huge orphanage and school in South Africa. And her story was that when she was like 16, she was promised to a much older man in marriage, and she didn't want to marry him. So she ran away from her village to go to another village. And she said when she got there, she realized that kids didn't have access to schools because it was 8 miles away and during the rainy season. And she said, I vowed at that point I was going to start my own school in this town. And she pointed out to a shade tree and she said, you see that shade tree? That was my third grade classroom. And that other one was my second and my first. And this was my office. And I said to her, how did you handle so many kids? And she said, I had the smartest third grader teach the second grade class and the smartest second grader first. And so here's a woman who deals with AIDS orphans, with poverty, all sorts of things that would buckle most people down. And yet not only has she succeeded, but she's thrived. And so, time and time again, I've come to people who have more than just the first world problems that we hear about, things that literally can kill you or put you under very little resource, no safety net, and yet they're able to overcome and be happy with their life.
I love that story. And I hope that you have one more to share too. You mentioned there were a couple.
Well, there was another story where we were going to do a story on fishing in Chile. And we found out the only professional fishing woman in all of Chile was in this little town called Horicon, obviously on the coast. They take horses, drag the boats out into the water. And this woman had a son who was like 30 years old. And the only days off she has taken on in her entire life is when her son was born. She took off 5 days and she's been out on the water every day. So I was expecting that she'd be kind of a tough, really hard woman. And I got out there and she was funny. She was all sorts of stuff. She was so grateful for her life and she thought she had it pretty good and didn't realize that she didn't have the newest iPhone or any of those other things. And so I realized that, happiness is only a chemical reaction in your brain. If you think you're happy, then you are happy. And she's another, example of someone who just overcomes tremendous odds and succeeds.
I love those stories. Thank you for sharing those. One of the things at DLP is we're trying to solve 4 crises. So we've kind of designated 4 areas or 4 crises in America that we're trying to solve. And we wake up every day jumping out of bed to try to solve these 4 crises. And one of them is the affordable housing crisis. Another one is the happiness crisis that you just mentioned. So what's pretty neat is that, it's you can do good and make a decent return at the same time, which is kind of fun. Hence probably the word impact, right? Impact with Don Wenner podcast. I'm assuming that, and hopefully this is safe to assume, the impact you've had throughout the world of viewers that have been a part of your show or watched your show. Have you ever received any good nuggets of from an audience member or someone who watched it on TV that said, "Hey, your show really inspired me to go take my kids on that trip we're always wanting to do"?
Yeah, you do receive emails, and it's interesting because when you're involved in running a household or running a company or anything that you do, sometimes, you're sort of stuck, your head is within the weeds, and then, somebody will say, "Hey, you changed my life." But, there were other ways in which we changed the place in which we were going. I'll never forget, we were in this mountain village in Morocco, and oddly enough, we were the first Westerners to visit this village ever. It was so far and remote, and they never had a road. And so at the end of the filming, I said to them, "Is there anything I could help you with?" And they said, "We could really use blankets for this place." And I bought a blanket for every single person in that village. It only cost me $500 or so. I don't know, maybe $600. I don't remember. But I remember walking away thinking, okay, I made an impact just for their comfort or safety or warmth in such an easy way. And I think that impact can be made even in non-financial ways, mentorship towards other people. And in unwittingly by doing good like that, I find there's like a boomerang effect that the sort of karma that you create, gives you a sense of accomplishment and well-doing, that you made a difference in somebody's life. And I think it makes you a more attractive person. And by being a more attractive person, you're probably a better salesman or husband or wife. And so I found that in my life, some of the best things that have ever happened are a result of either volunteering for something with no motives or, doing that kind of good deed.
Okay. We're going to take a fun little break here. This exercise is called a lightning round. Okay. But before we go to the lightning round, stay tuned, because once we come back from the lightning round, we're going to talk about family legacy. We're going to talk about work-life balance. We're going to talk about morning rituals, and we're going to talk about what it takes to be a good parent. So don't go anywhere, because we're going to start the lightning round. So how this works, Richard, is I'm going to say two things, and just whatever one comes to mind that you like better, your first reaction, just pick that one, okay?
Oh, is there ever a wrong answer in this?
No. Well, maybe one. We'll get to it. All right. So the first category is food. Okay. So are you let's have many appetizers or a one entree? So would you rather have a lot of appetizers or one entree type of person?
I'm going to go with the many appetizers.
Okay. Wine versus soda or pop?
Oh, I don't drink soda at all. So, and I don't drink a lot of wine, but I'd rather drink wine than soda.
Okay. Ice cream or pie?
Ooh, I'm going to go with ice cream.
Cheeseburger or pizza?
Pizza.
Chicken or steak?
Steak.
French fries or broccoli?
Broccoli.
All right. Okay.
That was the wrong answer. I should have said French fries. No more.
Okay. Sports. Basketball or football?
Football.
Brady versus Peyton Manning?
Brady.
The Olympics versus traditional pro sports?
The Olympics.
All right. Well said. Okay. The last category is learning. Books versus podcasts?
Books.
Documentaries versus books?
Documentaries.
Lectures versus hands-on learning?
I'd say lectures.
Bill Gates versus Elon Musk?
Well, I used to always tell women to think of me as like Bill Gates without Microsoft, so I'll go Bill. Though they're both very smart guys, I'm going to say Bill Gates.
Okay, terrific. Thank you for that lightning round. Wonderful. All right, let's talk about morning routines.
Okay.
So there's a book we like at DLP called Miracle Morning. And it's a fabulous book. If anyone hasn't heard of it, check it out. We're big fans of the author. So you're very successful. Do you have your version of a miracle morning, or do you have a morning routine? And if so, what is it?
So because I have three school-age children, so generally I get up around 5:30 in the morning, 6 o'clock. And then, I let the cats out and then, make coffee. It's really me getting them ready. And then I because we are on a private road, I have to drive my kids to school, which is great because, you download a little with them. My boys like to talk about sports. My daughter, talks to me about other things. And so in that 7 minutes I drive to them, I really enjoy it. And then I turn on the radio. I'll listen to either news or some of the Howard Stern interviews I like. And then I get home. Now, today is a typical day. Even though it's super cold in Connecticut where I am, I like to go for long walks and, get in a quick 10,000 steps or, about, I guess it translates to probably around 4 miles. And, and I'm finished and it's not even 9 o'clock. It's 8:30 at this point. And so I feel like if I've done something, then whatever task I have in the day to do, I feel more invigorated that I've moved instead of just having coffee and sitting down at your desk and being a lump on a log.
Fabulous. I like it. Okay. Work-life balance. Is there such a thing?
I think part of the secret, and I found this with some of the other explorers or people in television, anytime you can include your family in work-related things, not only do they understand what you're doing, you don't have the guilt about being away. So much of what I do revolves around travel. And, my boys are 11 and my daughter's 13. I so enjoy introducing them to things that were special to me, or in the case of in exploration or television, you meet some incredible people. And, so I'm always very proud to be able to show off my wife and kids.
I love that. One of the things that Don talks about is the 8 F's. And I won't list all 8 F's, but I'll list 4 really quickly. So friends, family, fun, and fitness. Okay. That's just 4 of them.
Right.
He uses the baseball analogy. If you just go work out by yourself, so that's fitness, well, you just hit a single. Now, if you can go do something active with your family, well, then you just had fitness and family. You just hit a double, right? So, and if maybe your friends tag along, so then that could be a triple. So he likes to
I'm Rod Carew then. I am Rod Carew. A lot of singles. Everybody likes to think of themselves as a home run hitter. But, I just feel that, look, I feel like I could do a better job keeping up with friends because I get very involved in family and career. Though I have to give a lot of credit for my wife because she is very social. And sometimes, sort of in a begrudging way, I'm like, oh, okay, let's do it. And generally, I'm happy I did. Often I don't want to wait around for other people to do things because I find in life that if you have to wait for somebody or a group, then you have less power over your life. Look, I most of my walks are by myself, and that's fine. I always liked when I used to be able to run, that it was this very meditative moment that you have your most enlightened thoughts during exercise. And then, Bo, this from mountaineering, that it's really wonderful to hike with a buddy and the hours go by and you've solved all the problems of the world. And, I find that the best conversations I've ever had are when I'm walking. So, I think one can really be not just one thing or the other. You can be all of those things. I think the most important thing is to do something, not to become a victim of inertia, just keep moving forward, keep learning, keep evolving.
Absolutely. And personal time or, a meditation time or walks by yourself, time alone is very important to recharge the battery. Absolutely. I don't want to overlook that at all. I just remembered a cool story. I was climbing Everest and you were doing a show or a program to base camp. So we got,
I was filming an IMAX thing.
Yep. So you had a really kind of, I don't know, maybe an epiphany, but just a magical story on the walk-in about Rob Hall, who perished on Everest. But many of the viewers or listeners know Into Thin Air or the tragedy on Everest. So I found this story pretty compelling. Do you mind sharing it?
Yeah, sure. So as you mentioned, I guess it was around 2006. You would remember because you climbed Everest that year. That I was working with an IMAX crew, and we were on the 10th anniversary of that famous Into Thin Air incident. And we were in one of those tea houses that you find along the paths going to base camp. And when you travel with the producers or editors or directors of a film, and it would be like James Michener showing you Hawaii in Hawaii. So they're showing us this Into Thin Air IMAX film that happened during this terrible accident. And I remember my tent mate, he was from Italy. We split off from the IMAX group the next day, and we were talking about this scene within the movie where this mountaineer Rob Hall was pinned near the top, and he was radioed to his pregnant wife in New Zealand And because she had a mountaineering background, she knew he was dying. He knew he was dying. They're talking about what they were going to name their child who was yet to be born. I mean, it was one of those moments that was so intimate and so private, you almost thought you shouldn't be hearing it. And so we pull into a tea house, I don't know, up at about 15,000 feet. I'm just guessing, 16,000 feet. And we're playing cards because we had some time. And this little blonde girl taps on my shoulder and she said, "Do you mind if I play?" And I'm like, "Sure." I mean, you don't see that many little blonde, kids up on a mountain at that altitude. And I said, "What are you doing here?" And she said, "Oh, my mommy and I are visiting my daddy's grave." And this was Rob Hall's daughter who had not been born yet, Sarah Hall. And, your mouth just drops open. And you know what the lesson that it taught me, as much as meeting you, Bo, or knowing that you had summited Everest, I keep thinking back to that little girl, and that travel in general is not the highlight that you think is going to be the highlight often isn't, like the summit or something like that. It's the people you meet along the way. And I found that in life, if you're open to experiences or people or new ideas, that these type of things happen more often than probably chance predicts.
Yeah, I love that story. And it made me think about, frankly, all the children out there that do grow up in foster homes or, lost a parent or two-parent or
That's
both
tough.
parents. And, Don Wenner and his wife, Carla, they have two biological boys, but they just adopted another child to kind of help with that, area of need, not only in the U.S., but
and that takes a special person. And I've always been very had a lot of admiration for people who've been able to welcome, people who aren't biologically theirs into their family. And I also do see this in a lot of third world countries, because people really realize how imbalanced their life is. And, they acts of kindness, it's sort of, there's this Arabic desert mentality that if you meet a stranger in the desert, that you give them all the hospitality you can, because you never know when you're wandering out in the desert. And I think that's a really great tradition.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Well, you're, again, prolific entrepreneur.
Okay. Prolific.
That's right. You've traveled the world. You took a big risk to start your own TV show, which has done very well. And you also have 3 kids. Okay. Awesome wife. Let's talk about parenting, because a lot of people that are listening are struggling with, hey, I'm trying to be successful in my career, but also be a good parent. Do you have any good parenting hacks or tips or tricks
I think
to learn from?
I think if you're a parent, you realize pretty early in that you're not the perfect parent, because you're very flawed. You're going through it for the first time, and everything is situational. But what I do feel good about in my relationship with my wife is that we, everything we do is really geared towards the children. And my mother and father, I felt, were very unselfish towards that. And so we spend a lot of time with our kids, whether it be meals or travel or any of those things. And I have no idea how they'll ultimately turn out. But I do feel that I have, put them at least on a path forward to where they feel loved and they feel that there's the support of somebody else around them. And, after that, it's, some of it's luck and some of it's chance. We're definitely not tiger parents. I think my children's happiness is going to be the measure of success, and not necessarily, whether they get into an Ivy League school or not.
Well said. One of the crises we're trying to solve at DLP is this legacy crisis, or the family legacy crisis, or the generational wealth crisis. So it has many different names, but you
right.
get the idea. And there's kind of an ancient proverb that says, shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. The Irish have a saying where they call it clogs to clogs in 3 generations. And it's this, and basically this is what this means. The first generation is in their shirt sleeves. So they're mowing a lawn or they're painting houses, right? They build wealth, and it takes blood, sweat, and tears. And then their kids don't know what it takes for that toil, that kind of sacrifice. They kind of spend most of the money. And then the third generation are back in shirt sleeves again, hence shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations, building, painting houses or mowing lawns and, building a career or business. And there's about a 70 to 90% chance of that happening if you really don't do anything proactively as a parent to help with your kids. How do you instill, hard work, discipline, or the joy of life to your kids? Any ideas come to mind?
Well, this is where I have to look at some own personal failures. So I'm 2nd generation American, and so my grandparents were from Germany and from Italy, came to this country for a better life, worked really hard. The first generation, I think, is that really tough working generation. My uncle from MIT, his father didn't go to college or even high school, and yet he's the head of MIT's nuclear engineering department. And my father's, an airline pilot. I didn't even realize I'm the first person on my father's side to even graduate college, and my sister was the first, person on my father's side to go to college at all. So I think what I fear is that my parents are post-Depression era people. So they really valued a dollar and the idea of saving and the idea of living beneath their means. And I fear that my generation is living to their means, or at least the appearance above their means. And I don't know if I'm doing the best job of instilling that kind of toughness or resilience in my own kids, because they've gone, again, because of my profession, my kids have gone to Europe and they've gone to Africa and they've gone to places that is not normal for most kids to travel. So I think that most parents don't want to see anything bad happen to their kids, but I think a little adversity is not the worst thing in the world. I'd rather have, them fail small than fail later. And so, that's where I'm trying to reconcile to whether I'm being the best parent I can be.
As always, love your candor and perspective. So let's talk a little bit about drive here as we kind of wrap up. But drive is a big one, okay? So take a look at Don Wenner. So Don Wenner, when he was born, his parents were 16 years old, okay? So if you're listening, imagine that, right? You're 16 years old and you're going to have a child. And they had to support that child, so you can't stay in high school, right? You have to go and get jobs.
Right.
And they grew up, Don grew up in a very challenged environment. His parents worked really hard. He often talks about they would go to yard sales to buy clothes and so on and so forth. And then, that experience, right? Don has persevered through many things, and he's built an amazing company. So where do you think, where does your drive come from? Or where do you think, if you could tell someone or a parent or a kid, but maybe the best way to answer this is just, where does your drive come from?
Well, I think that there is an element of people's fear of failure. And, the further you sort of go up the ladder, the chances of failing become greater and greater, and you do fail. I think that I'm genuinely enthusiastic about a lot of things that I do, and I've chosen a path that's less traveled and is not as standard as, say, if I went to business school and, went to work for a corporation. So I grew up around entrepreneurial people. I think my mother instilled the possibility in me that everything was possible. And I feel blessed that I have a good brain, and that, I know how to access things and people. And I think I have a pretty good eye at filling in the blanks of what I don't do well. Like, I think that one of the secrets to life is knowing what you don't do well and then not doing it. That's half kidding, but on there's an aspect of it to where, it's, again, I feel very responsible now for my family. And I feel personally that I don't want to be a B student, as we sort of alluded to before. Mm-hmm. And so, that's my drive. And I've also find that as I surround myself with positive, energized people, that you sort of put yourself on that track too. Surround yourself with, people who are always saying it can't be done, or, you hang around losers, you become a loser.
Yeah. Okay. So perfect. All right. So in 10 years from now, right? So I'm curious where you're going to be in 10 years. Now, I must say, DLP, right? So we own a lot of real estate, right? And we're primarily in the South, right? The Sun Belt plus Texas, as we like to say. And there's a lot of people moving from Connecticut and New York down, to Florida or the South for a whole host of reasons. So
they're soft.
In 10 years, where are you living and what are you doing?
Well, I happen to like living where I am. And I do have an opportunity to live any place in the world. So, my parents lived in the same house for 60 years. And I do like being in a place to where people know your name and the people in the store and all that. So I do like a sense of community, though I am open to living to other places other than that part of the world which you described. So I'm open to it. So 10 years from now, I'll be a bit older. I'll probably have 2 artificial knees. I'll be asking you to repeat things because I can't hear. As they say in the old age business, it depends.
Well, wonderful, wonderful. Well, please tell the audience again, you've written a great book. You have a great TV show. So remind the audience on where they can learn more about you and your show and your book, please.
Well, my television show is Born to Explore. I wrote a book by the same name, but I can't say it even holds a candle to your book, Die Trying. That's the book I would recommend. It's Catcher in the Rye meets a modern day explorer.
Well, you're very kind, very kind. I promise you, Richard's book is better than mine. All right, terrific. And I've got to mention this because Don Wenner is my inspirational leader. He's my boss. He wrote
I have to meet him. Honestly, you've got me so jazzed about him. I don't know if I'm worthy of meeting him.
You will meet him for sure. I'd love to have you come and actually present with a lot of current investors or potential investors or people that just want to learn more about what we're doing. So we'd love to have you come attend that and speak.
Oh, so thank you, Bo.
We'll talk about that for sure. But for the real estate operators out there, or just any operator, Don did write a book called Building an Elite Organization. It was the #1 book on Amazon in the world. If anyone here is struggling on, gosh, how do I scale a business and not work myself to death? This operating system that Don created is pretty cool. So check it out if you want to. If you don't, that's totally fine. So Richard Wiese, 14 nominations, 2 Emmys. We are so grateful that you're here. Thank you. Thank you. I miss you. We love you.
And thank you for your friendship, Bo.
Okay. Thank you for your friendship. Your friendship doesn't go unnoticed. And the next 10 years, by the way, hopefully we'll still be hanging out and having fun together. How about that?
Hey, you complete me.
This has been Don Wenner on the Impact Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode. You can check out our other episodes by subscribing wherever you get your podcasts or on YouTube, or check us out online by going to impactwithdon.com. I encourage and challenge you to make an impact.